Hey there, everybody. P. Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Album Homework Assignment, our Sunday show. We have here in the co-captains chairs going head to head today, both from in the Prague seat, Chad Hutchinson and the professor of Prague, Mr. Ken Golden. Good morning, gentlemen.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Ken.
Doing
Hey.
good. Doing good. These two guys have had their assignments for weeks and weeks and weeks. Chad's been busy bouncing around the world, going on vacation and things, and Ken's been waiting, and here we are today. So they're finally going to talk about their assignments. I haven't heard a whisper of what they've each been listening to, so I am really excited to hear what we've got today. So because I can't wait any longer, Chad, what were you given from Ken to listen to?
Okay, well, Ken and I had a little discussion before he gave this to me, and he knows I've got a little bit of a breadth of likes underneath that have the umbrella of progressive rock, but I don't venture very far past fusion when we're talking jazz. So Ken decided to throw me in that arena. Not only did he throw me in that arena and push me, he gave me one that started out with a 25-minute song. What a dick. So the album he gave me, and it's surely a classic, is Herbie Hancock's Crossings from 1972.
Yes. Yes.
So I did a little bit of research on this, and I read that, I don't know a lot about the jazz and jazz rock stuff. So I did some research. I read a little bit about Miles Davis Group and Bitches Brew, and honestly, I've never heard Bitches Brew either. I did flip through it the other day, and I see there are a lot of similarities between this album and some of the Bitches Brew material, even the instrumentation. But Herbie Hancock was in the quartet until '68. Then he left, and then he heard Bitches Brew, and that really got him excited about electronic instruments. And he has this trio of albums that he calls Wandishi, I guess is how you say it.
Wandishi.
So there's the Wandishi from '71. There's Crossings from '72 and Sexton from '73. There it is.
And actually, just interrupt. Well, so people see the beautiful cover. Just saying yes.
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, it's cool.
Anyway,
That's
Very cool.
beautiful.
Yeah. So so this was this period was Herbie Hancock's delve into something with a little bit more influence from rock and a little bit more electronic music and synthesizers and Moog. He's got a 7-piece band on this album with reeds and trombone and trumpet. And then, like I said, it starts off with this 24-minute and 50-second song called Sleeping Giant. Well, I was a little taken back by that, and I knew what he was throwing at me. I was like, oh God, here we go. So I put this thing on, and honestly, it didn't grab my attention. It was too much. It was too much for me at one chunk, this 25-minute thing. But I listened, I got through it. So this is about the first time I went through it. So I got through it, and honestly, I was kind of exhausted and didn't really get much out of Quasar and Water Torture, 7 and 14 minutes, respectively. But because I have a homework assignment, I went back to it, and I've listened to it 4 or 5 times now. And I had an idea the other day that I'm not going to start with Sleeping Giant. I started with Quasar and Water Torture, so I could sort of digest them a little better because they're smaller chunks. And that gave me a much better perspective on what this thing is as a whole. Now, do I love all of it? No, I'm not. I'm just not a jazz guy. But there are definitely parts of each of these songs I liked a lot. And I said to myself today, I said, well, in the end, now that you've heard this thing several times, what song do you think you like the best? And surprisingly, I think my answer is Sleeping Giant. Both Quasar and Water Torture both have like a cool, like the melody a lot of times comes from the bass. Like in Quasar, there's a really cool double bass, stand-up bass groove that comes back, it recurs. There's a little bit more smooth jazz going on there. So there's times where it gets a bit random for me. But there's some cool flute going on later in the song with some synths bubbling underneath of it. But this one was a little bit more freeform. I liked it. It's probably the one I liked the least out of the three. Water Torture, 14 minutes, starts off very spacey, maybe some bubbly effects at the beginning. But then there's a really awesome bass melody that has like 3 or 4 parts that comes back throughout the whole song. There's times where that melody comes in with the electric piano, and then there's this flare and they go off into something, and then it gets soft and they come back and here comes this cool bass melody again with the electric piano. There's another spot in there that loses me a little bit where it gets kind of haunting and it's a little random. But there's there's horns kind of coming in and out. And then halfway through, like it kind of, like a dog hearing a whistle, like, whoa, I hear Mellotron. Mellotron sneaks in there, which was pretty cool. And then after that, it sort of moves into sort of this jazzy, groovy improv, and slowly tails off as you get to the end. But Water Torture was pretty cool. There's definitely some cool stuff in there. The bass medley with the electric piano, I think, was my favorite part of it. I do like recurring themes. So when things get a little too random, my interest gets lost. I'd have to listen to it a gazillion times to maybe get it. So I'm a 5 out of a gazillion. I'm getting there. But then there's Sleeping Giant. So I went back to that. And I still can do without the drum intro. It's 2 or 3 minutes long. They're just drums, and that doesn't do a lot for me.
That's actually kind of an important part of the album. It's this whole tribal.
Yeah, I get that. But from a listener standpoint, I didn't need it. But then sort of that fusion-y stuff starts to happen about 3 minutes in. So it starts to get your attention. But it really has a nice gradual build. And you get up to a point where I was like, wow, you know what? This is noodly, but it's pretty awesome. And it would be insane to see happen live. Then it kind of chills out around the 9-minute mark. And then it gets pretty funky. There's a really funky part. Which starts to remind me of the material that he wrote for the Fat Albert Show. Kind of getting that funky stuff was really pretty cool. I enjoyed that. Unfortunately, that funky part only lasted about 2 minutes. So cool electric piano and horns after that. I'm just looking at my notes here because it is a 25-minute song. The cool jam between electric piano and bass. And it gets into a sax solo, some bass improv that got a little bit boring for me. That was about 5 minutes of little bit meandery. I mean, all amazing musicianship. I'm not taking that away. It's just my personal taste. It got a little meandery.
Chad was waiting for the guitar to come in.
Yeah, I was waiting for the big Moog flares.
Yeah.
And then, the outro sort of slows it down, and all of a sudden there's this one big flare without about a minute left with drums, instrumentation, and then it kind of chills out. But I think as a whole, there are a lot of really cool parts in Sleeping Giant that I was able to sink my teeth into, with only a few things here and there that weren't as appetizing to me. But I will say it did get better with each listen. The first time I listened to it, I even said to my wife, I was like, oh man, you should hear what Ken gave me. But it's a bit of a chore for someone who likes what I like to get pushed this way. It was a chore. I'm glad I've listened to it several times. It's not something I would pull out every week, but I will certainly go back to it.
So that would be my question then. So would you consider maybe buying this, or just listen to it online occasionally, or would you forget all about it?
No, I think I would listen to it online occasionally. I would like to try out the other 2 in this series of 3 albums. And I think I need to suck it up for 90 minutes and listen to Bitches Brew too.
Can we talk about this a little bit? So
yeah.
So
I want to learn.
First thing I want to do is I want to give you the thought process that I had, how I arrived at giving this to you. Originally, I have a pretty good grasp of Chad's taste. And I know he likes guitar because I know he liked, Scott. He was friends with Scott McGill, who I worked with, and Chad was friends with.
Played at my wedding.
Yeah. And, and I know that Chad likes, guitar fusion, Return to Forever, what have you. He likes Morgable. So my original thought really was to give him a Pat Martino album. And I was thinking about giving him something like Consciousness. And then the more I listened to it, I said, I don't know if he's really going to enjoy it. And the whole point of this for me, really, I enjoy doing this. I enjoyed doing the one with Steve for a different reason. But for me to do this, I want to give Chad something that I think he's going to enjoy. I don't want to give him something that he's going to hate. But I also want to give him something that's a little bit out of his comfort zone, that's going to push him a little bit. And I know he's not a jazz guy. I know he likes jazz rock, he likes fusion, but I didn't know that he knows a thing about jazz. So I thought, Pat Martino, Consciousness, that might not do it for him. Then I thought, let me give him Joyous Lake. Now, Joyous Lake, Pat did in 76, I think it was, 74, 76. And that's a full-on fusion album, And I said, if I give that to him, he's going to love it, but he's not going to get anything out of it. It's just going to be like he discovered a fusion album that escaped him.
It won't expand my horizon.
Right. So then we were talking a little bit, and I said, you know what? Bitches Brew. But Bitches Brew, that's like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's a double album. And then that's not really fair. And he's not going to understand the vocabulary. And I mean, that's like literal, as amazing as it is to take Chad, and that's like taking him like with water wings and throwing him in the deep end of the pool.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to do that. So then I thought, well, what about Mwandishi? And then I said, Crossings is the better choice, because with Crossings, he added Patrick Gleason to the lineup, and Patrick Gleason added all the synthesizer stuff.
Right.
So that's why you got that. And the reason you didn't get Sexton, which is probably even more electronic, is because I don't have it on CD. I just have it on vinyl. So that's why you got Crossings, because I happen to have the CD at my fingertips. And I think that the thing about Mwandishi, I think, like, if you do explore, I think I would recommend you listen to Sexton and then go back to Mwandishi.
Okay.
So the whole thing about this, if you want to call it a style of music that Herbie Hancock was exploring on these albums, he was going back to his African roots. It was a very important part. If you wouldn't know this probably unless you dug deep, but all of the musicians they worked with their African names.
Right.
And they used the Swahili name. So it was Mwandishi, Herbie Hancock. You had, let's see, what was, I can't even pronounce Buster Williams, the bass player, but everybody had something. Everybody has, Billy Hart, the drummer, was Jabali Billy Hart. So anyway, you get the point.
Right.
And that's why I was saying the beginning of Sleeping Giant, with all that tribal African rhythms, that sort of sets the tone for the album. You got a lot of free jazz elements. And wait, I'm getting a phone call that I will hang up on, spam call. And you get a lot of, you get some free jazz elements, but you get some of the signature Herbie Hancock stuff. It does get it into a groove. It does get some funk to it. And it's all part of a genre. Typically we call it like spiritual jazz. That's a name that's been cooked up probably in the last 10, 15 years. But in another way, we talk about Cosmogroove. Pete, I don't know, do you ever hear me reference Cosmogroove? So Cosmogroove
makes sense, though. I totally get weird.
So Cosmogroove, so this guy Doug Watson came up with the term, and there's this great website. You go to freeform.org. You dig through there, and his description of Cosmogroove says Cosmogroove is a transgressive improvisational music which combines elements of psychedelia, spirituality, jazz, rock, soul, funk, and African, Latin, Brazilian, Indian, and Asian influences, culminating into an all-encompassing cosmic groove. At its most accomplished, Cosmic Groove is both expansive and highly rhythmic, and simultaneously finds connections with mind, soul, and body. And this is, this is one of the preeminent Cosmic Groove albums. Yeah, I wanted to give Chad something that would push him a bit, and that's why you got the album. Like I said, my intention was not to give you something that you would hate. With Feigenbaum, I give him something he'd hate, but but I didn't want to do that with you. I wanted to push you a little bit and put you a little bit outside your comfort zone.
And that totally succeeded.
Okay, good.
And I want to add here, because I'm very familiar with all these albums too, I think it's a really good choice, because Ken could have easily gave you Herbie Hancock's Headhunters,
Sure.
which is much more accessible. But I think this is a better gateway to you into the world of Herbie Hancock Electric, because it is a little bit out there.
Yes.
And that I think will make you appreciate the other albums in this trio, and then move into stuff like Headhunters, which is more funky, more accessible. So I think it's a great choice.
And great. And I would also recommend, if you go through to look at the discography of the musicians that were part of Mwandishi. Benny Maupin had a great album called The Jewel and the Lotus for ECM. Eddie Henderson had 2 great albums for Capricorn Records of all labels. It was really strange. You had the Allman Brothers and you had Eddie Henderson. Yeah. Julian Priester made an extraordinary album for ECM called Love Love that had Bill Connors from Return to Forever playing on it, and that album's loaded with Mellotron. Patrick Gleason's on it. It's very, very spacey. It's basically Mwandishi. Buster Williams, bass player, had great albums. One called Pinnacle. Billy Hart did a great album for A&M. Can't remember the name. Somewhere in my collection. But all of these guys, it was very important. A lot of these guys, they played with Miles Davis in Miles Davis Electric period, and that's that was like the watershed. Bitches Brewed is like the watershed moment for all of this. And and you had of course you had Chick Corea, all these guys, John McLaughlin.
The personnel on Bitches Brew is insane.
It's insane. And then but if you go through Miles's entire Electric period, the lineup changed, but it was clearly very, very important. And that's really the foundation of jazz rock. I think of this as electric jazz. I always thought, to me, I got into all of this by working my way backwards. I was a prog rock guy. Then I started to explore fusion, Return to Forever, Mahavishnu Orchestra, things like that. Then jazz rock. And the next thing you know, you're listening to what I call electric jazz, albums for like CTI, where it's just Fender Rhodes. Herbie's playing Fender Rhodes all over this album, things like Fender Rhodes, guys playing electric bass, and it's not rock, it's jazz, but it's plugged in, and it gets more exploratory and much more interesting for me. I mean, I still listen to, I listen to everything. I listen to bop from the 50s, 60s, whatever. I listen to all kinds of stuff, hard bop, a bit of free jazz, but all of that is from working backwards. So for my mind, for you, Chad, it was time for you to get out and listen to, the prog rock thing and look, Rush and Genesis and all that stuff. It's all in our DNA, but it's time to explore.
Well, your timing was actually very good, because I had recently filled in some holes in my collection with Return to Forever and been sort of an RTF kick. So this is a nice progression from that. So
yeah, you listen to that, you can kind of hear the lineage.
Yeah,
to this. It's not direct, but you could hear, you could hear
all in the same universe
where this is going.
Yeah.
You could hear where this is going.
Yeah, like the real active moments in Sleeping Giant. I heard some, twinges of where Return to Forever would end up.
It's very spacey in parts, some free. A lot of it is about the space between the notes. That's like we talk about, and I talk about that, like when we listen to some of the electronic stuff. You really have to listen. There's things going on. There's little things going on, like the Talk, those Talk albums. It's not. They're albums that are kind of quiet and they demand your attention. Sleeping Giant is not a casual listen. Nothing on this album is a casual listen.
No.
It demands your attention. You gotta take the phone off the hook. You gotta close the door. Maybe shut off the lights if you can. Just sit there with a cold drink and just take it all in. And because there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I tried to listen to it yesterday while I was doing some work. And I'm like, I can't do both with this. I mean, I had to take notes for tonight, but I'm listening to it like if I don't pay attention to it, I'm going to miss stuff.
Sure, you got Benny Maupin. He's playing soprano, flute, sax. He's playing flute. You got Eddie Henderson playing trumpet, and you have Julian Priester on trombone. You have the three of them. I mean, they're kind of and they're playing off of Herbie, who's playing the Fender Rhodes, and and those great bass lines that Buster Winters, Billy Hart. That's a great rhythm section. So. Yeah, it's a classic album. I'm glad you didn't hate it. And I think the more you listen to it, I think you'll really dig it. I
almost did on that first listen, but I knew I had to give it more of a chance.
Glad you gave it
because of its reputation. I knew I was missing something, so I had to keep going at it. And I'm glad.
Pete, I surprised you, right?
Yeah, I was not expecting that. I'm pleasantly surprised.
I knew right away. I mean, what would be the point of me just giving him, just reaching into my collection and pulling out some Swedish prog rock album from 1974? I know he would like it. He would love it, but there's no growth there, And for what we do when we do this channel, to me, it's all about growth. It's all about, passing the torch, passing knowledge down, The
reason why we call him the professor on this channel, right?
It's absolutely true.
Yeah. See that?
So. But I did get, this will segue into Ken's side of this. I got a really tough homework assignment partner out of anybody on the channel.
Oh, yeah.
I get the guy who's heard every freaking album. So my challenge was to find something he had not heard.
Yeah. Well, yeah, when I did this with Steve, imagine the two of us.
Yeah, right.
And then Steve was like, Steve was incredibly. If you think I'm hard, Steve was like impossible. So
what were you given from Chad?
Okay, so I don't have any props. I have nothing to hold up. So Chad gave me a CD from the David Barrett Trio, the second album, right, Chad? Yeah. David Barrett Trio. He is, I'm looking at my notes here. He's an accomplished Canadian guitarist that he just seems to be flying under the radar in the US. I'd never heard of this guy. Yeah, so, he's got a ton of endorsements and accolades, but no publicity really. I mean, I couldn't even find a review of the album to steal information from. So this is nothing. I mean, based on his bio, he's played with a lot of famous people. But that just doesn't seem to be getting him, much notoriety outside of, I guess, his local area in Canada. So this is his second album from his instrumental trio. It seems that he does a lot of solo stuff as well. There's this pervasive connection to Rush in the music. Alex Lifeson produced his first album, and he has his hand in a part of this. And I think, I don't have all the credits and stuff. I think Terry Brown engineered this album also. Is that correct, Chad?
I think so. I think that's right. Alan Parsons actually had a hand in the first album as well.
Right. So compositionally, I'm frequently reminded of Rush in places. I did find like one review which made reference to Yes and prog rock, but I didn't hear that at all.
I don't nearly hear that either.
Yeah, so I just kind of, it's guitar, bass, and drums. There are some keyboards, but they're not really prominent. At times it sounds like he's channeling Lifeson in terms of his tone, his guitar tone.
Yeah, he does have that sort of hollow body Gibson sound.
Yeah.
But he's if I would use a word, it's a little twangier.
Okay.
Than Lifeson would use, but not twangy like country twangy.
I particularly heard a couple of tracks, one called Atom Smasher and one called Ravenswood. He's got Michael Sadler of Saga singing vocals on one track. And Michael's a great singer. It's fine. I would say, to me, he's obviously a very talented player, but compositionally, there was nothing there that made me like, jump out of my skin. I didn't have a holy shit moment from this guy, but at the same time, I wasn't turned off. And I listened to the album about 5 or 6 times. The guy's, no, he's a hell of a player. He's a bit of a chameleon, but I would have liked to have heard a little bit more of his own style. There were some parts that did jump out at me that stood out. Track called "The Kid Stays in the Picture" is a solo acoustic piece.
Yep.
I would have loved to have heard more of that. That was really good. The one track that really stood out was a track called "Romero." It's got some Latin flair to it. That was really nice. The Elegant Universe, it starts out with those Rushisms, those Lifeson, sounds, and then a guest sitarist jumps in, and he has this Middle Eastern flavor, but then he disappears, and Barrett kind of heavies it up. I think less Rush and more ethnicity would make this more interesting. Maybe he should work in a quartet, adding more keyboards, maybe adding a vocalist. And I'll tell you one thing, this guy needs a publicist because he's unknown. The guy's obviously a talent, but who is he? No, nobody. I guess he's making a career, but he needs to do something, to shake things up. It was an enjoyable album. I'd give it a solid B. It was much better than the Squill Feigenbaum made me suffer through. So, at that point, it was a B. It was going to be a B minus, but I thought about that Aqua Surge album I had to listen to, and I said, no, I'll give this a B.
Yeah, I find this to be a fun album. None of the songs are too long, 3, 4, 5 minutes. I heard about it, of course, through Rush channels, and I sampled it online. I'm like, this is kind of cool. And then when I got the album, I liked pretty much every track on it. He does, like you say, channel Alex. He uses some of those big open strings in his chord, big chords with open strings, and like the Gibson sound and all that. But some of the songs are a little offbeat. They're a little wacky. Quark, Atom Smasher, like songs like, was it Ravenswood Chasing Sound and Dagmar? They have like a little Indian twinge to them in their melodies.
He needs to do more of that. He needs, you know what I mean? I like that ethnic element that he brought into it, but there needs to be more David Barrett and less Alex Lifeson.
Yeah, and I have yet to grab his first album. I've been meaning to do that, and I just haven't. So at some point, I'm going to get that first album and see what that's like. But yeah, I think the guy's a great guitar player. I'd like listening to him. He's very clean. He can rock pretty hard, but it's interesting. I do like those big open chords.
He may have the Holdsworth syndrome, and that being a great guitar player who may ultimately be a better sideman than lead, than to lead the band. And every time I say that, somebody comments and rips me. Some guitar player rips me and says that, what a moron.
Well, this David Barrett guy has got a bunch of solo albums. I don't know anything about those.
Right.
They could be completely different than the trio. I have no clue.
There are no reviews of his albums.
No, it's even his website's okay.
His website blows. It does. His website blows. It's not even a coherent website. But the guy could play his dick off. He's good. He's good.
Checking out. Cool. Yeah. So Ken, would you consider maybe buying this, or maybe listen online, or
I would listen online. It was not a bad album. I've heard a lot of guys like this, over the years. So this is the kind of thing, like, if Mike Varney still had Shrapnel, maybe he would have done something, figured out a way to place him somewhere. I think maybe in a larger context, this guy has a place in a band, as the stunt guitar player in a band, that kind of a thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's a good album.
Well, we got two wanting to continue listening to both of these artists, which is a good thing. So that's pretty positive. So cool. I'm glad you guys kind of went a little outside the box in your assignments here. So pretty cool. So thanks for watching, everybody. If you haven't checked out either of these albums, please go do so. Report back. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. And stay tuned for another album homework assignment next week. I'll give you a spoiler. It'll be myself and Butch Jones next week, and I think Lynn Versace is going to be hosting the show. So stay tuned for that. Coming up a week from today, thanks both to Ken Golden and Chad Hutchinson. Visit us on the web at www.seaoftranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. All together, all the damn time. Stay tuned for the three of us on In the Prague Seat each and every week. Not everybody appears every week, but I think you guys know the drill when you watch that show. So for Chad and Ken, I am Pete Pardo. Have a good one, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Hudson Valley Squares. Take care. Bye-bye.